Imagine it's a quiet Thursday evening and you finally have the living room to yourself. The television hums softly, the wall clock ticks with that steady, reassuring rhythm, and you think, why not treat myself to a little private time? After all, at our age we've earned every crumb of comfort life can still offer. Yet what if the habit that eases the mind today is quietly asking the body to pay a stiff fee tomorrow? Tonight we're going to shine a warm, understanding light on 7 self-pleasure blunders that men over 60 often overlook, seemingly harmless choices that, over time, can nibble away at nerve sensitivity, hormone balance, and even the health of the heart. Because when we understand these missteps, we can swap them for kinder habits that protect circulation, preserve sensation, and keep that confident spark alive. I first realized how invisible these mistakes can be when a gentleman I'll call Harold stepped into my clinic last autumn. Harold is 71, a retired postal carrier who still prides himself on being as punctual as the mail truck he once drove. Over the past year he'd begun waking with tingling fingertips, a low pelvic ache that lingered through breakfast, and a puzzling fatigue that followed him like a stubborn shadow. His blood pressure was textbook, his cholesterol enviable, and his annual labs looked like they belonged to a man 10 years younger. "Doc," he whispered, eyes darting toward the closed door, "I've been doing the same thing the same way for decades. How can something so familiar suddenly leave me paying for it the next morning?" For those meeting me for the first time, I'm Dr. Nolan Easton, a urologist who has spent more than 30 years helping men protect, repair, and celebrate every facet of intimate health. Across those decades I've listened to bedside confessions spoken with the relief of loosening a too-tight collar, fears about performance, comfort, and the secret routines we seldom share even with lifelong partners. One truth stands taller than the rest. After 60, the body rarely collapses overnight. It erodes slowly, like a shoreline battered by gentle but relentless waves, until what was once solid ground begins to crumble beneath our feet. When Harold described his nightly ritual, it sounded innocuous enough. Around 11, once his wife had drifted off, he'd settle into his recliner, prop a tablet on his lap, cue up a favorite western, and allow his thoughts, and his hands, to wander. The rhythm hadn't changed since VHS tapes ruled living room shelves. But his tissues had. A body with 6 decades under its belt demands a gentler tempo. Picture your circulatory system as the familiar neighborhood roads. Subtle cracks appear where smooth pavement once lay, and the speed limit that felt effortless at 40 must ease back if you want the suspension to last. That brings us to the first silent blunder many older men stumble into: believing the technique that felt fine at 40 is still friendly at 70. Harold's grip, angle, and speed hadn't evolved with his ever more delicate capillaries. Close on its heels lurks a second misstep: denying the need for recovery. Remember sprinting across the football field in school? You'd collapse breathless, then leap back to your feet for another lap within minutes. Past 60, every tissue cell punches a shorter time card and demands ample breaks to tidy up metabolic debris before clocking in again. Ignoring those breaks leaves micro-injuries smoldering beneath the skin. Before we journey deeper, let's share a quick moment of gratitude. If this conversation already feels helpful, would you tap the like button, subscribe, and ring that little bell so you never miss our weekly chats? And please let me know in the comments with a simple yes or no if any part of Harold's story sounds familiar. I read every reply. Your honest feedback guides me like a lighthouse on a rocky coast, helping me tailor advice that keeps our entire community thriving. Back to Harold's puzzle. Together, we uncovered a third culprit masquerading as common sense: dehydration. Water may seem unrelated to private moments of pleasure, yet thicker blood flows more sluggishly through the microvessels that feed erectile tissue, leaving the spongy chambers less plump and the skin less resilient. At the same time, the body's natural lubricant, plasma-derived fluid released through tiny urethral glands, arrives in smaller amounts, turning what should be smooth sailing into a source of silent friction. Harold admitted he'd stopped drinking after dinner because he dreaded nighttime bathroom trips. The unintended consequence was microscopic tears along delicate nerve endings, inflammation that dulled sensation, and that persistent morning ache. The remedy we designed was wonderfully straightforward. First, we paced his evenings, skipping a night here and there to allow full vascular recovery. Second, We swapped the recliner slump for a gentle set of hip-opening stretches that draw fresh blood into the pelvis and coax tight fascia to relax. Third, we reintroduced hydration. A tall glass of water about an hour before bed, long enough for his kidneys to do their work before dream time. Within weeks, Harold reported the tingling was gone. His weekend bocce buddies noticed a firmer handshake. His wife teased that his cheeks looked rosier than they had in years. Just when Harold felt confident the mystery was solved, a fourth surprise surfaced. His choice of entertainment. High definition, rapid-fire scenes overstimulate the visual cortex, pushing the nervous system into a sprint when it craves a gentle stroll. That burst of cortisol may shave seconds off the journey to climax, but it also devours magnesium and B vitamins, the very nutrients seniors rely on for steady heartbeats and deep sleep. By trading flashy clips for slower, more sensual audio, the vinyl record pace of storytelling rather than the strobe light flash of modern video, Harold let his nervous system settle into a calmer, healthier rhythm. If you're sitting there thinking, maybe I've been a bit too hard on myself, remember this. Awareness, not guilt, opens the door to better health. Your body has ferried you through triumphs and tragedies, weddings and funerals, moon landings and smartphones. It deserves a rhythm tuned to today's tempo, not yesterday's. Harold found that gentler beat and rediscovered comfort he thought was lost forever. So can you. Harold's shoulders finally softened once the morning ache retreated, yet a month later he walked back into my office wearing an expression halfway between relief and concern. "Doc," he began, tugging at the brim of his well-worn cap, "my body feels better, but now I'm noticing a new kind of sting, and it's not coming from inside the nerves." The culprit revealed itself in a seemingly harmless tube sitting on his nightstand. Like many men who prize privacy over pharmacy visits, Harold had ordered an inexpensive no-name lubricant online, one boasting exotic fragrances and an impossible promise of everlasting glide. What the bright label skipped over were the parabens, artificial dyes, and trace alcohols hidden inside, each capable of stripping moisture barrier oils faster than winter wind on chapped lips. At 71, his epidermis had thinned into delicate parchment, leaving even small irritants to burn like coarse salt. We talked about chemistry the way two old friends reminisce over black and white photographs. "Picture your outer skin," I told him, as the original leather seats in a beloved vintage car. They've weathered decades of sun and heat. The last thing they need is a bargain bin cleaner that cracks what's left of their suppleness. That evening Harold traded the bargain brew for a gentle, water-based formula free of fragrance and color. By morning, the sting was gone. Simple switch, dramatic reward. Yet most men never learn that lesson until inflamed patches or recurrent urinary discomfort finally drive them to the clinic. That slippery subject carried us naturally to the fifth unseen blunder: assuming the mind and body clock out at the same time. For many seniors, bedtime rituals revolve around winding down, yet old movies or scrolling headlines can keep adrenaline humming beneath the quiet exterior. The nervous system, wired to react to perceived threats, interprets flashing lights or provocative news as a call to arms. When men push through that invisible alarm and force intimacy, the resulting climax rides a wave of cortisol instead of oxytocin, leaving the heart rate stubbornly elevated long after the lights go out. Harold confessed he'd once believed climax itself would relax him. Instead he found himself staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., replaying the very video he'd tried to escape. We experimented with something deceptively modest: a 10-minute breathing ritual drawn from diaphragmatic physiotherapy. 3 counts in, 5 counts out, hands resting over the lower abdomen to remind the ribs to stay quiet. Within a week Harold reported dozing off before midnight with the tablet still untouched on the side table. Energy greeted him at sunrise rather than that bleary heaviness he had called just getting older. The discovery underscored a stirring truth: pleasure and relaxation are twins that refuse to be separated. Treat one poorly and the other limps after it. If you're watching this right now and thinking the conversation already feels like a comforting hand on the shoulder, I'd be grateful if you'd click the like button, subscribe, and tap the little bell so our future chats find you without effort. And because your stories guide me like trail markers, share a quick yes or no below. Have you ever felt more wired than calm after private time? I read every note. Your answers shape the way I tailor each week's guidance to fit our community's real-life needs. While Harold's nights grew calmer, a sixth hurdle waited in plain sight: posture. Years of reclining in the same chair with hips flexed beyond 90 degrees had kinked the iliac arteries like garden hoses. Blood reached the penis, yes, just not as freely as it could. Worse, the compressed nerves exiting the lower spine sent erratic messages that sometimes registered as dull ache, sometimes as pins and needles beneath the scrotum. Countering that problem required more than swapping chairs. It called for retraining muscle memory carved over decades. We began with a simple routine. Before any intimate moment, Harold spent 60 seconds standing barefoot beside the bed, feet hip-width apart, shoulders rolled back, chin slightly tucked. From there he lifted each knee slowly, one at a time, engaging the lower core while letting the pelvis tilt forward and back like a gentle pendulum. This micro warm-up coaxed fresh blood along reopened channels and signaled the lumbar nerves to wake up. The delight on Harold's face at his next follow-up reminded me of a boy discovering a hidden spring in the woods. "Doc," he laughed, "I haven't felt that kind of fullness in years." He'd also noticed fewer bathroom trips because a relaxed pelvic floor meant the bladder emptied completely during the day. That observation steered us toward the seventh and final misstep men rarely discuss: neglecting true pelvic floor awareness. Contrary to popular belief, those muscles aren't just women's business. They act as a living hammock, cradling the prostate, bladder, and rectum while orchestrating the flow of both urine and pleasure. Over time, chronic sitting, untreated constipation, and even stubborn coughs can leave the male pelvic hammock sagging like an old porch swing, robbing climax of its satisfying crescendo. Guided contractions, sometimes called reverse Kegels, became Harold's secret weapon. He practiced gentle tightening on exhale, full release on inhale, 10 rounds during his morning shave and 10 before bed. The transformation was subtle but potent: shorter bathroom lines, steadier stream, deeper sensation. What I cherish most about Harold's journey is the ripple effect it created well beyond the bedroom. His wife noticed he no longer rushed through breakfast, measuring each sip of tea between relaxed breaths. His grandkids found a more energetic playmate during Sunday park outings. Intimate health, it turns out, is not a sealed chamber hidden away for late-night confessions. It is woven into every smile we share, every errand we run, every ounce of confidence that slips into the pocket of an otherwise ordinary day. So if you find yourself hearing echoes of your own habits in Harold's story, remember there is no expiration date on learning gentler rhythms. Swap chemicals for kindness, adrenaline for breath, compression for flow, and that trusty hammock beneath your core will reward you with strength you thought was lost to time. There is still more ground to explore together, but for tonight let's rest on the truth that change, even in the 7th decade, is not only possible, it is often delightfully simple once the blindfold slips away. When Harold and I next met, spring light streamed through the clinic windows, and he greeted me with an easy grin that seemed to lift years from his features. Yet beneath that newfound comfort flickered a quieter question. "Doc," he admitted, fingertips drumming the edge of his chair, "I never realized how much shame I'd stuffed into a drawer marked private. Fixing the physical parts was one thing. But what do I do with all the awkward feelings I kept hidden?" His words echoed the unspoken concern of countless men who sense their bodies changing but fear the emotional terrain even more than the biological one. The truth we uncovered together is that intimacy after 60 is as much a conversation with the heart as it is with the bloodstream. Our next leg of the journey focused on clearing the static that old beliefs can create, allowing healthier signals to travel unblocked between mind, body, and partner. For decades, Harold had quietly shouldered myths engraved during his youth, ideas that a gentleman never spoke about self-pleasure once the wedding vows were sealed, or that seeking guidance marked weakness. Those myths are stubborn weeds, their roots deep in a soil fertilized by hushed locker room talk and pulp magazine advice from an era long past. Harvesting them out takes patience. We began by mapping how each belief had shaped Harold's behavior: the rushed clandestine routines, the reluctance to share needs with his wife, the fear that changing habits signaled decline rather than adaptation. As he spoke each myth aloud, I watched his posture shift, shoulders releasing an invisible burden with every sentence. "Naming a shadow often shrinks it," I reminded Harold, and I remind you now, that the male body past 60 is not a malfunctioning machine. It is a veteran instrument tuned to subtler frequencies. Where once the rhythms of youth blasted like brass bands, now the melody softens into a string quartet, inviting patience and deeper listening. Approaching intimacy with that mindset transforms what could feel like limitation into an invitation. Harold began framing his nightly ritual not as a rush to finish, but as a slow conversation between touch and response, much like savoring a vintage wine. Minutes dissolved into a gentle hour infused with curiosity rather than urgency. Erections arrived slightly later but lingered longer, mapping new pathways of sensation that youth's sprint had raced past. Such emotional reframing naturally spilled over into Harold's marriage. One evening, while sharing tea, he opened a conversation he'd avoided for decades, confessing he sometimes sought privacy because he feared appearing needy. His wife, startled, laughed and confessed that she often presumed he preferred time alone. Their mutual misconceptions, like two mismatched puzzle pieces, had silently rattled around the marriage box for years. With myths aired and corners rounded by honesty, they experimented with shared touch, her gentle hand guiding the new posture routine, his breath syncing with hers during their pre-bedtime breathing exercise. What began as vulnerability quickly blossomed into companionship, then into gentle playfulness. If, even briefly, this story rings a bell in your own life, please click the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so these weekly heart-to-heart sessions arrive right when you need them. And give me a simple yes or no below. Have you ever sidestepped an intimate conversation out of fear it might wound pride? I treasure every response. They help me tailor guidance that truly serves our growing circle of brothers and sisters navigating life's later chapters. With trust deepening at home, Harold felt ready to tackle another invisible hurdle: the belief that hormone shifts were fixed destiny. Many men think testosterone declines like the setting sun, inevitable and unchangeable. The reality is gentler and far more hopeful. Lifestyle factors Harold already embraced, better sleep, hydration, mindful breathing, have been shown to nudge hormone production back toward balance, much like pruning a rose bush encourages fresh blooms. Over months, his improved circulation reduced visceral fat around the abdomen, a well-known sinkhole where excess estrogen is converted. His morning energy spikes signaled endocrine systems warming up, and his blood panels later confirmed a modest but meaningful rise in free testosterone. Numbers aside, he felt the difference. More laughter before lunch, steadier focus during his woodworking hobby, a renewed urge to plan weekend adventures. I also introduced Harold to the notion of sensory cross-training. Just as athletes diversify workouts to prevent injury, seniors benefit from exploring varied forms of gentle stimulation, brushing fingertips over textured fabrics, tracing circles along the inner wrist, breathing in lavender or sandalwood while lightly massaging temples. Such small acts reawaken nerve pathways dulled by years of predictable routine. Harold adopted a simple habit. Each morning he'd crumple a handful of rice inside his palm, noticing grains sliding and clicking against calluses, reminding peripheral nerves to stay alert. By night, when intimate moments arrived, the brain's sensory map felt broader, and climax traveled new circuits, carrying a layered richness. One afternoon, Harold returned not for a problem but to share a triumph. He'd been babysitting his 6-year-old granddaughter, building Lego castles. Halfway through, she announced they had built the tallest tower in the world. Harold caught himself jumping up faster than he had in years, arms sweeping wide in mock victory, no sudden dizzy spell, no stitch in his side. He told me later that it felt like turning back a page in the calendar. Reclaiming spontaneous movement. That moment matters because intimate health is rarely about the bedroom alone. It is about every playful reach, every gardening twist, every deep belly laugh that bathes our cells in healthy hormones. Yet even victories require vigilance. Harold's renewed confidence tempted him to slip back into earlier pacing, this time re-watching old action films late into the night because, in his words, he felt invincible again. The difference now was awareness. He noticed tension creeping into his jaw, sleep becoming lighter. 2 nights in, he paused the film, remembered our talk, powered down the tablet, and chose instead to read a few pages of poetry while practicing slow pelvic floor releases. The racing heartbeat calmed, dreams returned, and by morning he felt the subtle triumph of mastering his impulses rather than being mastered by them. Harold's journey illustrates that change at 60, 70, or 80 rarely travels a straight highway. It wanders like a country road, winding through old memories, surprising turnoffs, and scenic overlooks we never noticed in youth's hurry. Each adjustment, gentler technique, mindful breath, toxin-free lubrication, posture tweaks, myth-busting conversations, is a modest landmark. Strung together, they form a path that looks, at first glance, like a personal tale of comfort. Look closer and you'll see a blueprint for broader well-being, a reminder that the body is an ever-adaptable companion eager to collaborate when we treat it with curiosity and respect. So, dear friend watching from the quiet comfort of your own home, if Harold's story encourages even a single moment of kinder self-talk tonight, consider that a priceless beginning. Your body has not stopped offering invitations, perhaps it has simply adjusted the RSVP time. Accept that invitation generously, explore the textures of change with a playful heart, and know Dr. Nolan Easton will be here next week, eager to walk the next mile with you. Warm April rain was tapping the clinic skylight the day Harold walked in carrying a small wooden box. His cheeks were glowing like the first tulips of the season, and before I could ask a single question he set the box on my desk and lifted the lid. Inside lay a brass compass, polished to a mirror shine. Found it in my grandfather's shed, he explained, voice thick with emotion. You showed me how to steer by gentler stars, Doc. Thought you might like a reminder that your guidance keeps old sailors off the rocks. In that compact gesture lived the very heart of what we have explored together over these past few weeks. The idea that intimate health after 60 is less about avoiding storms and more about learning to read new constellations so we sail with grace no matter how the tide shifts. Harold's compass offered the perfect segue into the final, often overlooked element of lasting well-being: continuity. Many men treat health advice like a quick patch on a leaky roof: apply, forget, and hope it holds. Yet bodies thrive on rhythm, not rescue missions. The pelvic stretches, slower breathing, toxin-free lubricants, mindful posture, balanced hydration, sensory cross-training, and myth-busting conversations we wove into Harold's life cannot bloom fully unless stitched into daily routine like the quiet chime of a grandfather clock. I asked Harold what kept him from drifting back into old patterns now that the pain and fatigue had vanished. He paused, thumb tracing the compass lid. It's the small rituals, he said. I fill a glass of water each night and set it by my reading chair like a promise to tomorrow's self. I leave the tablet in its drawer and place a book of travel essays where it used to sit. And, he chuckled, I keep your breathing mantra on a sticky note stuck to my shaving mirror. It's hard to ignore when it fogs up every morning. Those modest cues anchor his newfound habits, transforming fragile change into second nature. And the rewards? They ripple through everyday living far beyond private moments. Harold recently joined a community woodworking group, standing tall at the lathe for hours without hip cramping. He tossed a baseball with his grandson and marveled when the boy asked, wide-eyed, Grandpa, how are you so fast? Even sleep, that elusive treasure so many seniors chase, now comes gently, his dreams no longer punctured by midnight restlessness. Intimate well-being is rarely about a single act. It is the undercurrent that buoys every gesture you make between sunrise and moonrise. Perhaps you've sensed a similar undercurrent stirring in your own life as we have journeyed together. If you feel even a flicker of hope blooming, take a moment right now to tap the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so our future conversations find you without effort. And in the comments below, leave a simple yes or no. Has this series helped you commit to one small daily ritual? I read each answer myself. Your honesty is the tide that guides my next voyage of advice, ensuring each episode lands where your needs are greatest. While encouragement from a doctor is helpful, the most potent medicine came from Harold's own curiosity. One evening he told me he'd started journaling brief notes after private time. Sensations that felt richer, stretches that released tension, even stray anxious thoughts that tried sneaking in. Those notes became breadcrumbs, leading him back to what worked on tougher days when the old myths whispered discouragement. In sharing this practice, I invite you to do the same. Keep a bedside notebook, nothing fancy, just a place to jot 3 lines. What felt good, what felt strained, and one gratitude. Over time you'll see patterns emerge like constellations. Perhaps hydration on humid nights matters less than on dry ones. Maybe an afternoon nap leaves your nerves more responsive. In those patterns lies personalized wisdom no textbook can give. Another compass point Harold discovered was service. He began volunteering twice a month at a local senior center, teaching basic woodworking to men and women who thought their arthritic fingers had retired from creativity. Guiding their hands across smooth pine, he noticed how explaining gentle posture and controlled breath reinforced his own habits. Teaching, it turns out, cements learning. When you pass along what has healed you, you double its strength, once in the listener who benefits, and again in yourself as repetition engraves the lesson deeper. Should you find a neighbor, sibling, or friend quietly struggling with fatigue or self-doubt, consider sharing a tip you've picked up here. You needn't lecture. A simple story, a gentle stretch demonstrated over afternoon tea, can plant seeds that grow long after conversations fade. At our final checkup, I examined Harold's latest blood work. Inflammation markers had dropped, his resting heart rate sat comfortably in the low 60s, and, most telling for a urologist, his PSA levels, though already healthy, had nudged slightly down. While numbers never capture the full poetry of living, they offer reassuring punctuation marks in a longer narrative of well-being. Harold tucked the lab printout into his pocket with a satisfied nod. "Feels good to see proof," he said, "but I already knew inside that things were working, my mornings told me." That quiet inner knowing, that trust in the body's whispered feedback, is a victory far bigger than any graph. Before Harold left, we returned to the brass compass. I turned it over, catching light on the engraved initials of his grandfather. Every compass, I told him, relies on a magnetic pull you can't see. Your habits, your mindset, your willingness to adjust, that's the invisible force aligning the needle of your health. Keep nurturing it, and even if clouds hide the stars, you'll still steer true. He smiled, slipped the compass back into its box, and pressed the lid closed with a soft click that sounded, to my ears, like a chapter settling shut. And so, dear friend, as you tuck away our conversation and perhaps glance toward your own nightstand, remember, you, too, possess a compass. It might be a breathing routine taped to the mirror, a glass of water placed thoughtfully by your chair, or a decision to trade hurried secrecy for slow curiosity. Whatever form it takes, trust that modest tool to guide you through the gentle seas of later life. Your body remains eager to collaborate, your heart still capable of surprise, and your spirit forever deserving of ease. From my clinic in the rain-washed city to your quiet living room, I'm Dr. Nolan Easton, grateful for the privilege of sharing this journey with you. Keep treating yourself with the same kindness you offer loved ones, keep listening for the subtle wisdom coursing beneath each heartbeat, and remember, the horizon of well-being stretches endlessly forward, no matter the candles on the cake. Until our paths cross again, stay curious, stay gentle, and sail on with confidence.